It's a very primary and rough draft. I will focus on analysis of the classification and knowledge of qi in a book written by Shen Kuo. The name of the book is Mengxi Bitan. Okay. Shen Kuo was a literature and statesman in Song Dynasty, excelling in many fields of study and statecraft. He was a mathematical, astronomy, antiquarian, blah, blah, blah. We can see a long list in this PowerPoint. But I will not read such a long list, but just show the phases of Shen Kuo from the perspective of modern science. Most of his ideas on all those subjects were contained in a book titled Mengxi Bitan. Someone translated it as Bruce Talks from Dream Break. The famous book is regarded as one of the most important scientific books in pre-modern China. Now, I would like to re-examine this book from a totally different perspective. So, now, before digging into Shen Kuo's text, I would rather to raise a question. Is there a research field could be called natural philosophy in pre-modern China? In my opinion, how to answer this question depends on how we define what natural philosophy is. If it's used in Plato's or Aristotelian sense, it's very difficult to find the counterpart. Now, in order to better understand the question itself, I will simply discuss the role of natural philosophy in pre-modern Europe. This quotation are from Plato's Phaedo. Robert Plotkin considered that in this conversation, Plato went out of the study of natural philosophy and discovered metaphysics through taking forms as causes. He found an unchangeable ideal world outside of the changed physical world. Now, this is Plato's famous analogy of the divided line. It's clearly defined the relationship of the visible world and the intelligible world. Outside of the phenomenal world, it's a real world, and mathematics is the way to get there. If Plato had a natural philosophy, he would need mathematics to save it. Now, let's return to Aristotle. He established the natural philosophy by clarifying the knowledge, but its position is lower than metaphysics. Since being is meant in many ways, Aristotle looked for the primary sense of it. Being as such, or in its own right, on which the other kinds of being are dependent. The primary sense of being is first identified as wuxia, and then discovered to be the sort of being that belong not to animals, plants, and cosmos as a whole. So the natural philosophy shows the chain outlined to the highest being. The top of chain, as we all know, were instated by the Aramite god in the Middle Age. I know there are too many differences among Plato, Aristotle, and Aquinas and others. However, I want to emphasize that all of them assumed that there is a perfect and highest existence idols, wuxia, or God belong beyond the myriad or a phenomenal world. The investigation of natural things can help to approaching to the principle. If we follow these traditions to search for the natural philosophy in China, we must be on a wrong way. Because in Chinese philosophy, there is no exact division between phenomenon and ontological world. Substance and function have a single source, refers to the subtest principle, vast and selfless. The myriad images brilliantly content in it. No gap between the evident and the subtle, refers to the perfect evident images of every event and everything, the principle existing everywhere. This is the fundamental idea in Chinese philosophy. This is to say, we have no such amount of thinking that to transcend to the essential world step by step, like in Greek and in Middle Age Europe. This is an example from a text in the 10th to 11th century. It said the reason that all the patterns can be exhausted in simple that there is a unitary pattern in 10,000 things. Even a single object or event, however small, has its pants. So to sum up, if we want to understand the classification of knowledge in Mengxi Bitan, we must not use the framework of modern science, and we shouldn't use a framework of Aristotelian science. What we should use is the framework of New Confucians, investigating things and exhausting their patterns. Now, let's take a look at the catalog and the contents of Mengxi Bitan. There are 17 catalogs in Mengxi Bitan. Shen Kuo created a taxonomy of knowledge was naturally close to the Taiping Yulan tradition, an ideal pattern to place and record his encyclopedian knowledge. But is there any structure within the taxonomy? Now, let's try to think from the perspective of qi or the perspective of 格物致知. If we take the idea about qi into account, we can put these 17 catalogs into 5 categories. They are circulation or change of qi, qi yun, deposition of qi, qi bi, qi and creation, qi与创制, abnormal rate of qi, qi 的异常, remedy of qi, qi 的复常. This clarification will help us to understand the general idea of the different kinds of knowledge in Mengxi Bitan. But what is the Shen Kuo's own idea about qi? Here is a very important discussion. In medicine, there is a system called the 5 circulative cores and the 6 qi. On a miracle scale, it predicts the transformation of heaven and earth. On a miniature scale, the variable source of human illness or follow the wax and the wind of qi. From here, along with Shen Kuo's idea, in the first category, the circulation of qi, we can get an understanding of Mengxi Bitan's basic idea. That is the prediction of Qi's circulation and the description of all different patterns of Qi. That is what called 格物致知, investigating things and exhausting their patterns. Okay, but how to understand the practitioner here? Shen Kuo thought that the method to know the circulation of qi was a figure and number, 象数, which could predict the circulation of qi. This is the most difficult point in this research that involved a lot of technical details. So I would not discuss in here, but what I want to emphasize that following 3 points. First of all, prediction here is not to see the phenomenon. It's not like Plato's realm of the perfect forms, because it didn't claim superiority over sensible phenomenon, as if the latter was imperfect. Second, number was believed to be a level of phenomenon reality which was directly associated with observed things. The principle in the things themselves. This is what we mentioned before, the perfectly evidence image of every event and everything. This principle exciting everywhere. Third, a successful prediction of Zhan is not trying to describe a physical circulation of qi outside of man's emotion or spirit, but itself is a part of circulation of qi, and in Renaissance should be regarded as a part of the action Zhan itself. Okay. In order to understand the above point, we should take a second look of the correlative thinking or Xiang thinking, which have received all about 100 years of discussion. This is a huge project. For now, it's just a very primary review and analysis. My primary conclusion is, first, the natural philosophy in pre-modern China, such as Shen Kuo's work, is not trying to give a rank order to all kinds of theories and arts, similar to what we can see from Aristotelian tradition. Thus, all the 5 categories of 17 parts of Mengxi Bitan belong in the framework of 格物致知. And second, the content of the technology are also an important part of 格物致知. When the art, activities, and instrument reach their perfection, they become the Dao, or the way itself. That is why I mentioned in my opening talk yesterday, when one wants to get to know qi, one have to get involved with qi in their historical context of practice and action. Accordingly, if we pay more attention to the natural philosophy involved in practice and actions in both pre-modern Europe and China, the door to the wider epistemic world will open for us. It's very, very rough outline based on the David Fu and Yang Zhu's work. So this is end. Thank you. Thank you very much.